I never expected to question the ground beneath my feet until I started noticing the windows. Not the ones at eye level, not the ones framing shop displays or office workers, but the ones peering out from below. Half-buried windows staring up from what should be basement level. Their frames cut off by sidewalks that seem too high. Their glass reflecting a world they were never meant to see from that angle. Walk through Boston's Back Bay and you'll see them everywhere. Victorian brownstones with their elegant facades, but look closer at street level and notice how the first floor windows sit oddly low. What appears to be ground level architecture is actually floating above something else entirely. The same pattern repeats in Philadelphia, in Baltimore, in cities across the eastern seaboard. Windows that were once at street level now exist in a strange subterranean twilight, accessible only by descending steps that feel like they're leading underground. But it's not just America. Edinburgh's Royal Mile shows the same anomaly. Prague's Old Town reveals identical patterns. Berlin, Vienna, Amsterdam. Everywhere you look, historic city centres display this peculiar architectural feature. Windows below street level, as if the earth itself had risen up to swallow the bottom floors of centuries-old buildings. The standard explanation feels almost rehearsed. Urban development, they say. Streets were raised over time for better drainage. Sewage systems required elevation changes, natural sediment accumulation, infrastructure improvements. All perfectly reasonable explanations that sound convincing until you start measuring the distances involved. 3 meters, 4 meters. In some cases, 5 meters of elevation change between what was clearly intended as ground level architecture and current street level. That's not gradual urban development. That's not slow infrastructure improvement. That's a systematic burial of urban landscapes on a scale that demands explanation. I started documenting these buried windows methodically, photographing them, measuring the distances, noting the architectural details that revealed their original purpose. What I found was consistency where there should be variation, similar burial depths across different climates, different geological conditions, different historical periods. The same architectural disruption repeated with unsettling precision across thousands of kilometres. Take London's financial district. Walk through the narrow streets around the Bank of England, and you'll notice something strange about the Victorian commercial buildings. Their ground floor windows sit below current sidewalk level, accessible only through stepped entrances that descend into what feels like basement space. These weren't designed as basements. The proportions are wrong, the window placement is wrong, the architectural relationship to the street is fundamentally incorrect for subterranean space. The windows tell a story about intention. They were meant to provide natural light to spaces at ground level. Their size, their placement, their relationship to doorways all indicate they were designed for street-level commercial or residential use. Yet now they exist in a strange architectural limbo, half-buried, cut off from the urban environment they were meant to engage with. Here's what troubles me most about the conventional explanations. They treat each city as an isolated case. London raised its streets for one set of reasons. Edinburgh had different motivations. Prague faced unique challenges. Boston dealt with its own urban planning needs. But when you step back and examine the pattern globally, the explanations begin to fracture. Why would cities separated by thousands of kilometers, operating under different governments, facing different geographical challenges, all implement similar solutions that resulted in nearly identical elevation changes? Why would the timing cluster around the same historical periods? Why would the architectural disruption follow such consistent patterns across supposedly independent urban development projects? I found something else that conventional explanations struggle to address. The quality of construction visible in these buried sections often exceeds what exists at current street level. Stonework that demonstrates mathematical precision. Brick laying that follows engineering principles more sophisticated than what replaced it. Foundation work that suggests capabilities beyond what the historical timeline attributes to these periods. Stand outside a half-buried Georgian townhouse in Dublin and examine the stonework visible below current street level. The precision of the cuts, the tightness of the joints, the mathematical regularity of the courses. Then compare it to the street-level construction added later. The difference is striking, not just stylistically, but technically, as if the buried portions were executed by craftsmen with access to better tools, better knowledge, more sophisticated understanding of structural engineering. The windows themselves provide evidence that complicates the gradual development narrative. They're not small basement windows designed to provide minimal light to storage spaces. They're full-sized openings with proportions intended for primary living or working areas. Many retain original glazing bars, decorative elements, architectural details that make no sense for basement fenestration. These were meant to be seen, meant to be prominent, meant to engage with street life at their level. But perhaps most significantly, many of these windows show no evidence of being designed for the current relationship to grade. There's no weatherproofing appropriate for below-grade installation, no proper drainage systems, no architectural accommodation for the moisture and thermal issues that come with subterranean placement. They exist in their current state, not by design, but by circumstance. I started mapping the burial patterns, looking for correlations with geological features, climate patterns, historical events. What I found was more troubling than what I expected. The depth of burial correlates not with local geological conditions, but with the age and importance of the urban centres. The most significant historical cities show the greatest burial depths. The most architecturally sophisticated districts show the most dramatic elevation changes. This suggests that whatever caused this systematic burial affected established urban centres more severely than newer settlements. It targeted areas of concentrated population, sophisticated infrastructure, architectural achievement. That's not how natural sediment accumulation works. That's not how gradual urban development typically proceeds. Natural processes don't discriminate based on architectural sophistication or urban importance. The timing patterns reveal another anomaly. Across multiple cities, the elevation changes appear to have occurred within relatively narrow historical windows, not over centuries of gradual change, but over decades, sometimes less. Maps from the early 1800s show street levels that match the buried window heights. Maps from the late 1800s show current elevations. The transition happened quickly, systematically, and apparently simultaneously across vast geographical distances. What kind of process could achieve this? What could deposit meters of material across urban areas in such short timeframes? And more critically, what happened to the material that was presumably excavated to accommodate the new street levels? When you raise a street by 3 meters across several city blocks, you're moving massive quantities of earth and debris. Where did it go? The historical records that document these supposed improvement projects rarely mention the logistics of material removal on this scale. I found photographs from the mid-1800s showing cities in various states of what appears to be reconstruction rather than construction. And streets partially excavated, buildings with their lower stories exposed, infrastructure that looks like it's being uncovered rather than built. The official documentation describes urban improvement projects, infrastructure modernization, public works initiatives, but the photographic evidence suggests something more dramatic, more systematic, more coordinated than typical municipal planning. The buried windows remain, staring up from their subterranean perspective, witnesses to a transformation that happened too quickly, too comprehensively, too consistently to fit comfortable explanations. They remember when they were at ground level, when they engaged with street life, when they served their intended architectural purpose. Now they exist as evidence of a discontinuity in urban development that demands explanation. Each window represents a question about capability, about timing, about the nature of urban transformation in the modern era. They're not just architectural curiosities. They're physical evidence of processes that don't align with the historical narrative we've inherited. Evidence that suggests our understanding of recent urban development may be incomplete, simplified, or deliberately obscured. The windows are still there, in every major historic city, waiting for someone to ask the right questions about what they represent and what their presence means for our understanding of the past. What becomes impossible to ignore once you start looking systematically is the infrastructure problem. These buried windows don't exist in isolation. They're connected to drainage systems, utility networks, foundation structures that extend far below current ground level. When you examine municipal records for major cities, you find references to extensive underground tunnel networks, elaborate sewage systems, water management infrastructure that seems disproportionately sophisticated for the populations they supposedly served. The conventional timeline suggests these systems were built incrementally, added piece by piece as cities grew and modernized, but the physical evidence tells a different story. The underground infrastructure appears to have been designed as integrated systems, planned comprehensively, executed with mathematical precision that required coordinated engineering across vast urban areas. This isn't how municipal infrastructure typically develops. Cities usually grow organically, adding systems reactively as needs arise, patching and expanding existing networks rather than implementing comprehensive underground planning. Yet beneath cities like Paris, London, New York, you find tunnel networks that extend for hundreds of kilometers, following geometric patterns that suggest systematic design rather than organic growth. The famous Paris catacombs represent only a fraction of the underground infrastructure beneath the city. There are utility tunnels, transportation networks, drainage systems that demonstrate engineering capabilities and planning coordination that seems anachronistic for their supposed construction periods. What troubles me most is the scale. When you calculate the volume of material that would need to be excavated to create these underground networks, then add the volume required to raise street levels by 3 to 5 meters across entire urban districts, you're talking about earth movement on a massive scale. Millions of cubic meters of material displaced, transported, disposed of. Yet historical records provide virtually no documentation of where this material went or how such massive excavation projects were completed without disrupting urban life for extended periods. I started researching historical accounts of these supposed improvement projects, looking for contemporary descriptions of the work, complaints about disruption, documentation of the engineering challenges involved. What I found was remarkably sparse. Brief mentions in municipal records, budget allocations for infrastructure improvements, references to public works projects, but detailed accounts of the actual construction work, descriptions of the engineering methods used, records of the massive logistical operations required, these are conspicuously absent. For projects of this magnitude, you would expect extensive documentation, engineering reports, public hearings, newspaper coverage of disruption to daily life, records of cost overruns and delays. Major infrastructure projects generate paperwork, controversy, public debate. Yet the elevation changes that affected entire urban centres seem to have proceeded with minimal documentation and apparently little public notice. The architectural evidence suggests another possibility that conventional explanations struggle to address. Many of the buried structures show signs of having been built for their current below-grade condition, even though this creates functional problems that no architect would intentionally design. Windows placed to provide natural light to spaces that are now perpetually shadowed. Doorways that open into areas below current sidewalk level. Ventilation systems designed for grade-level air circulation now functioning poorly in subterranean conditions. This creates a logical paradox. If these structures were always intended to be below grade, why design them with features that only make sense at street level? If they weren't intended to be below grade, why do some architectural elements seem specifically adapted for subterranean function? The physical evidence suggests a hybrid condition, as if existing structures were modified to accommodate new circumstances they weren't originally designed for. I found examples of this architectural adaptation throughout European cities. Buildings where the original ground floor was clearly converted to basement use, but not simply by raising the street level. The modifications go deeper, involving structural changes to foundation systems, alterations to drainage patterns, additions of retaining walls and moisture barriers. These aren't simple grade changes, these are comprehensive rebuilding projects that transform the fundamental relationship between buildings and ground level. The timing of these transformations correlates with something else that's rarely discussed in conventional urban history. The mid to late 1800s saw massive population relocations across European and American cities. Official records describe rural to urban migration, immigration patterns, economic opportunities drawing people to urban centres. But the scale and speed of population changes in major cities during this period seems disproportionate to documented economic or social drivers. Cities that had maintained relatively stable populations for centuries suddenly doubled or tripled in size within decades. New neighborhoods appeared rapidly, often with infrastructure that seemed to precede the population that would use it. Streets, sewage systems, water networks built for populations larger than what existed at the time of construction, as if planners had advanced knowledge of population growth that wouldn't occur for years or decades. This pattern of infrastructure preceding population appears consistently across multiple cities during the same historical period. Not organic growth where infrastructure struggles to keep pace with expanding populations, but systematic infrastructure development that anticipated growth patterns with remarkable accuracy. The buried windows exist within this context of comprehensive urban transformation that happened faster and more systematically than conventional development models can explain. What makes this even more puzzling is the technological consistency. The engineering solutions implemented across different cities show remarkable similarity despite being executed under different governments by different contractors using supposedly different technical approaches. The tunnel construction techniques, the street elevation methods, the foundation modification systems all demonstrate standardized approaches that suggest coordinated planning or shared technical knowledge that isn't documented in official records. I started comparing architectural details from buried structures across multiple cities, looking for evidence of this coordination. What I found was troubling. Similar stone cutting techniques, identical mortar compositions, standardized structural engineering solutions appearing in cities separated by thousands of kilometers. Not just stylistic similarities that might indicate cultural exchange, but technical similarities that suggest shared tools, shared knowledge systems, shared engineering standards that operated across political and geographical boundaries. The implications of this coordination extend beyond simple urban planning. It suggests organizational capabilities, resource coordination, technical knowledge transfer operating on a continental scale during historical periods when such coordinations supposedly didn't exist. Infrastructure beneath our cities tells a story of planning and execution that doesn't match the documented political and economic structures of the times when this work supposedly occurred. These buried windows have become symbols of something larger, evidence of processes that operated beyond the scope of local municipal planning, beyond the capabilities typically attributed to 19th century engineering, beyond the organizational structures that official histories acknowledge. They represent physical proof of coordination and capability that complicates our understanding of how modern urban infrastructure actually developed. The windows remain half-buried, staring up from their subterranean perspective, waiting for explanations that can account for the scale, the timing, the coordination, and the technical sophistication they represent. Each one is a question mark carved in stone, a challenge to assumptions about gradual development, about independent municipal planning, about the true nature of urban transformation in the modern era. The windows haven't disappeared. They're still there beneath every major city, staring up through glass that was never meant to exist below ground level. Walk through any historic urban center with fresh eyes and you'll see them everywhere. Evidence of something that happened too quickly, too systematically, too comprehensively to fit the explanations we've been given. Whether you accept the conventional narrative of gradual urban development or begin questioning the timing, the scale, the coordination these structures represent, the physical evidence remains unchanged. These aren't just architectural curiosities waiting for someone to notice them properly. They're invitations to ask harder questions about the world we've inherited, about processes that shaped our cities in ways we may not fully understand.